The massive alien vessels darkened Earth's skies without warning. Their hulls gleamed with an otherworldly polish that spoke of technological superiority beyond human comprehension. Within hours, representatives of the Hegemony, a coalition of advanced species, demanded Earth's unconditional surrender. "Your species is primitive," declared Commander Tool of the Hegemony forces. "You have 30 Earth days to submit. Resistance is futile and would only result in unnecessary suffering." As global panic spread, Earth's nations convened emergency councils. During a tense meeting at the United Nations, Dr. Hannah Kim, a quantum physicist from Seoul National University, presented her analysis of the alien vessels. "These energy signatures are unlike anything we've recorded," she explained, pointing to fluctuating patterns on her tablet. "But there's something peculiar about their propulsion system." Captain Taewoo Park of the Earth Defense Force nodded grimly. "We need to gather more intelligence. Our conventional weapons won't even scratch their hulls." The room fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. Humanity faced its greatest threat, and they had just 30 days to find a solution. Dr. Kim stayed long after the meeting ended, studying the data from various observation stations around the world. The Hegemony ships maintained geosynchronous orbits, their massive shadows creating artificial eclipses over major cities, a clear intimidation tactic. At dawn, she called Captain Park. "I need access to the old radio telescope array in Jeju," she said without greeting. "The one decommissioned last year." "Why that specific installation?" Park asked, his voice rough from lack of sleep. "They're communication signals. They pulse in patterns we can't detect with standard equipment. The Jeju array has unique receivers that might help." Within hours, Dr. Kim arrived at the abandoned facility on Jeju Island. Dust covered the equipment, but technicians worked quickly to bring systems online. Captain Park arrived shortly after with a small team of military engineers. "We have company," he said, nodding toward the sky where a small Hegemony scout ship hovered. "They've been following since we left Seoul." "Let them watch," Dr. Kim replied. "They think we're primitive. Let's use that." As night fell, the first data streams came in. The Hegemony ships communicated on frequencies that seemed to shift constantly, but the old equipment at Jeju was sensitive enough to detect patterns. "Look at this," Dr. Kim pointed to her screen where waveforms danced in complex formations. "They're using quantum entanglement for instant communication. But there's something else." Captain Park leaned closer. "What am I looking at?" "Energy fluctuations, massive ones. Their ships require enormous power to maintain those perfect orbits and shield systems." Around the world, first contact protocols had given way to panic. Some religious groups declared the end times. Others formed cults worshipping the aliens as gods. Governments struggled to maintain order as people hoarded supplies and fled cities. The United Nations Security Council convened daily sessions. Military forces worldwide were placed on high alert, though everyone understood the futility of conventional weapons against such advanced technology. 5 days after the ultimatum, a smaller Hegemony vessel landed in an open field outside Geneva. A delegation of world leaders gathered to meet the aliens face to face. Dr. Kim and Captain Park watched the broadcast from Jeju. The aliens emerged from their craft, tall, insectoid beings with iridescent exoskeletons and multiple compound eyes. They moved with unsettling grace. "We have studied your species for decades," the lead alien announced through a translation device. "You are primitive, but not without potential. Under Hegemony guidance, select humans may advance to serve useful functions." The UN Secretary General stepped forward. "We request more time to consider your terms." "Time changes nothing," the alien replied. "Your technology is millennia behind ours. Your weapons are toys. Your resistance would be less than inconvenient." At the Jeju facility, Dr. Kim's team worked around the clock. They had established a pattern in the energy fluctuations of the alien ships. Their power cores cycle every 72 hours, she explained to Captain Park. During the reset, there's a 3-second window where their shields weaken. 3 seconds isn't enough time to launch any meaningful attack, Park said. No, but it's enough time to gather more data about what's inside those shields. They modified the radio array to send a focused pulse during the next reset window. When the moment came, Dr. Kim activated the signal. The response was immediate. Their monitors lit up with new information as the pulse bounced back from the nearest Hegemony ship. "Got it," she exclaimed. "Their hull composition, internal structure, everything." Captain Park studied the data. "Can we use this?" "Maybe," Dr. Kim said. "Their tech is advanced, but follows universal physical laws, if we understand how their shields work." The next morning, representatives from China, Russia, and the United States arrived at Jeju. Military officials and scientists crowded into the small facility. "We have 23 days left," the American general said. "Please tell me you found something we can use." Dr. Kim presented her findings. The Hegemony ships use antimatter containment fields for power, incredibly efficient, but potentially unstable if disrupted in specific ways. "Can we disrupt them?" asked the Russian admiral. "Theoretically," Dr. Kim replied. "But we need more data." Captain Park proposed a dangerous mission. "We need to get closer to one of their ships during a reset cycle, close enough to send a more focused pulse and receive clearer readings." "That's suicide," the Chinese official stated. "Their scout ships monitor all aircraft." "Not all aircraft," Park said. "We still have 2 experimental high-altitude gliders. No engine signatures, minimal radar profile." The plan was approved. Captain Park would pilot one glider, while Dr. Kim operated modified scanning equipment in the other. 2 days later, they launched from a hidden airstrip in the mountains. The lightweight craft rode thermal currents, climbing silently into the night sky. Above them, a Hegemony destroyer hung like a dark star. 2 minutes to reset window, Dr. Kim's voice came through Park's headset. They glided closer, the massive alien ship growing larger against the stars. Park could see intricate patterns etched into its hull, glowing faintly with inner light. 30 seconds, Dr. Kim said. "Activating scanner." As the reset window opened, Dr. Kim's equipment sent a focused pulse at the ship. For 3 critical seconds, the alien vessel's defenses dropped. The scanner received a flood of data, and something unexpected happened. The destroyer's lights flickered, and it drifted slightly off position. "Did you see that?" Park asked, banking his glider away. "Our pulse affected their systems," Dr. Kim replied, her voice tense with excitement. "It wasn't supposed to do that." They returned to Jeju with precious data, and an even more precious discovery. The Hegemony shields were vulnerable to Earth's primitive technology in ways the aliens hadn't anticipated. For the first time since the massive ships appeared, humanity had found a glimmer of hope. While military leaders prepared for what seemed like inevitable defeat, Dr. Kim made a breakthrough discovery in her hastily assembled lab. "They're using antimatter containment fields," she explained to a room of scientists and military officials. "Highly efficient, but," she paused, eyes gleaming, "potentially vulnerable to certain frequencies of electromagnetic radiation." General Minho Lee leaned forward. "Are you saying we might have a weapon against them?" "Not yet," Hannah replied. "But their advanced shielding has a critical weakness against what they consider our primitive electromagnetic technology." Earth's leaders authorized a desperate plan, Operation Sunburst. Intelligence Officer Julian Kang successfully intercepted communications from a Hegemony scout ship, providing crucial tactical data about their fleet formations. The lab was a converted gymnasium at Seoul National University. Equipment salvaged from various research facilities crowded the space. Scientists worked in shifts, analyzing the data from the high-altitude mission. Dr. Kim had not slept for nearly 30 hours when she made the discovery. She stared at her screen, rechecking her calculations. The models showed a clear vulnerability in the Hegemony shields. She rushed to call an emergency meeting. Within 2 hours, Military and scientific leaders from a dozen nations gathered. Some attended virtually, their tired faces visible on large screens mounted along one wall. The room smelled of coffee and fear. "Show us," General Lee said, his voice quiet but firm. Dr. Kim displayed a 3D model of the alien shield system. The Hegemony shields work by creating a quantum field that redirects energy attacks. Very advanced. But look what happens when we apply a specific electromagnetic pulse. She ran the simulation. The shield model flickered and destabilized. Their antimatter containment relies on perfectly balanced fields, she explained. The right EM frequency creates resonance effects that disrupt this balance, like an opera singer breaking a glass with the right note, added Dr. Hyun, a physicist from Busan. General Lee studied the model. "Can we build a device to generate these pulses?" "We already have them," Dr. Kim said. "Old EMP generators from the Cold War era. They'll need modification, but the basic technology exists." "How many would we need?" asked the American admiral on screen. "At least 40, positioned in low Earth orbit," Dr. Kim replied. "And they would need to fire simultaneously during a shield reset cycle." The room filled with doubts. Putting 40 devices in orbit without the Hegemony noticing seemed impossible. The aliens watched everything, their scout ships monitoring all launches. "There might be another way," a quiet voice said from the back of the room. All eyes turned to Intelligence Officer Ji-Yen Kang. She was young, barely 30, with short hair and eyes that missed nothing. She specialized in signals intelligence and rarely spoke in large meetings. "Explain," General Lee ordered. "The Hegemony communicates with their scout ships using quantum channels, but they also use standard radio for routine updates," Officer Kang said. "I've been monitoring these transmissions. They're encrypted, but follow patterns we can analyze." She approached the main display and connected her tablet. A series of signal patterns appeared. 3 days ago, I identified a repeating sequence in their communications," she continued. "Yesterday, I managed to partially decrypt it. They're planning a major fleet movement 2 days before their deadline expires." "Why would they move their fleet before the deadline?" asked Dr. Kim. "Intimidation," General Lee answered. "A show of force to ensure our surrender." Officer Kang nodded. "Exactly. They'll reposition their entire fleet in a display formation over major cities. All ships will move simultaneously." Dr. Kim's eyes widened as she understood the opportunity. "That means they'll all be operating at maximum power, straining their containment fields. And if we could hit them during that maneuver," General Lee began. "Their shields would be at their most vulnerable," Dr. Kim finished. The plan gained shape over the next hours. They would disguise the EMP generators as communication satellites. Several were already in orbit, left over from previous space missions. Others would need to be launched. But Officer Kang had an idea. "The Hegemony is watching for military launches, but they're ignoring civilian satellite deployment," she explained. "Private space companies are still sending up small communications satellites. The aliens consider them harmless." "Can we modify commercial satellites to carry EMP generators?" asked General Lee. Dr. Kim nodded. "If we keep them small enough, we won't get as much power, but with enough satellites, we could create the effect we need." For the next 2 weeks, scientists and engineers worked in secret facilities around the world. Space agencies in the US, Europe, Japan, and China prepared disguised launches. Officer Kang continued monitoring Hegemony communications, providing updates on their plans. Then came a critical opportunity. Officer Kang detected a scout ship landing in a remote area of Mongolia. A small team led by her infiltrated the area. While the alien crew conducted surveys, she managed to place a listening device on the ship's hull. When she returned to Seoul, she brought valuable intelligence. "The fleet repositioning is confirmed," she told Dr. Kim and General Lee. "All ships will move into display formation at 800 hours on day 28, 2 days before the deadline." "What about their shield reset cycles?" Dr. Kim asked. "That's the best part. Officer Kang smiled slightly. During major maneuvers, all ships synchronize their reset cycles. It happens 5 minutes after they reach formation. General Lee looked between the two women. So we'll have a 5-minute window where all their ships will be vulnerable at once. No, Dr. Kim corrected. We'll have a 3-second window, but it will affect all ships simultaneously. They named the plan Operation Sunburst. Around the world, modified satellites were quietly deployed. Each contained a small but powerful EMP generator tuned to the specific frequency Dr. Kim had identified. They were positioned in seemingly random orbits, programmed to activate on command. As the day approached, tensions rose. The Hegemony had grown suspicious of Earth's apparent lack of resistance. They increased their surveillance, scanning for weapon buildup or space-based defenses. They're looking for traditional weapons, Officer Kang assured the nervous generals. They don't consider our satellites a threat. 3 days before the Hegemony deadline, Dr. Kim finished the last calculations. The 43 satellites were in position. Each would fire a precisely timed pulse at the alien fleet during their synchronized reset. If this works, General Lee said quietly, we'll only get one chance. If it fails, we surrender as planned, Dr. Kim replied. They'll never know we tried. Officer Kang's listening device on the scout ship provided a continuous stream of Hegemony communications. Each update confirmed their plan was on schedule. The aliens remained confident, unaware that humans had discovered their vulnerability. The night before the fleet maneuver, Dr. Kim stood on the roof of the research building, looking at the dark shapes of alien ships visible against the stars. Tomorrow would determine humanity's future. Either they would strike a devastating blow against their would-be conquerors, or they would fail and face subjugation. General Lee joined her, offering a cup of tea. Do you think it will work? He asked. Science says it should, she answered. But they're so advanced. There might be safeguards we don't know about. Officer Kang seems confident. Dr. Kim smiled slightly. She's remarkable. The intelligence she gathered made all this possible. They stood in silence, watching the alien ships that had changed everything. Tomorrow, Operation Sunburst would begin, and Earth would fight back with what the Hegemony considered primitive technology. Their greatest advantage was being underestimated. Dr. Kim thought about the irony. The aliens had traveled across the galaxy with their antimatter drives and quantum communications, only to face a threat from technology they considered obsolete. Sometimes, she reflected, the oldest tools were the most unexpected weapons. As the deadline approached, the Hegemony grew increasingly confident. Their massive ships repositioned for the final occupation phase. Humans are so predictable, Commander Toll remarked to his lieutenants. They'll submit rather than face extinction. Meanwhile, Earth appeared to be preparing for surrender. Diplomatic channels buzzed with talks of transition protocols and governance structures. In secret, a network of modified EM pulse generators was positioned throughout Earth's orbit. Captain Park led a small flotilla of retrofitted ships presented as an honor guard for the surrender ceremony. From a hidden lunar base, Dr. Kim monitored the final preparations. All pulse generators are in position, she reported over a secure channel. Targeting systems calibrated. Copy that, replied Captain Park. May our ancestors watch over us today. The lunar base had been built years ago as a research station, then abandoned due to funding cuts. Now it served as the command center for Operation Sunburst. Dr. Kim and a small team of engineers had arrived 3 days earlier on what appeared to be a routine supply mission to the International Lunar Observatory. Through the base's viewport, Earth hummed like a blue jewel against black space. Dr. Kim could see the Hegemony ships as tiny dark spots against the planet's surface. Soon those spots would move into their final formation. Incoming transmission from command, said Engineer Junot, who managed communications. General Lee's face appeared on the main screen. He looked tired but focused. Status report. All 43 pulse generators are operational, Dr. Kim replied. Targeting systems are locked on the predicted formation coordinates. And the timing. Synchronized to activate exactly 5 minutes after the Hegemony fleet completes its movement. That's when their shield reset will happen. General Lee nodded. The UN Secretary General will sign the formal surrender documents at 900 hours. The ceremony is scheduled to last 30 minutes. That gives us a perfect window, Dr. Kim said. The fleet will be in position by then. What about Captain Park's team? His ships are ready. They've been cleared by the Hegemony as the honor guard for the ceremony. In Earth orbit, Captain Park stood on the bridge of the EDS Brave, a small military vessel hastily painted with ceremonial markings. 5 similar ships formed his flotilla, positioned in a respectful formation near the massive Hegemony command ship. The contrast was stark. Each human ship looked tiny and primitive next to the alien vessels. But appearances were deceiving. Hidden within each ship's communication array was a modified weapon system designed to fire special missiles during the crucial seconds when the alien shields would drop. Status check, Park ordered his crew. All systems normal, Captain, replied Lieutenant Doan. Weapon systems disguised as communication arrays are functioning perfectly. The Hegemony is hailing us, reported Communications Officer Yunju. Captain Park straightened his dress uniform. On screen, the alien face that appeared was unsettling. Compound eyes, mandible-like mouthparts, iridescent exoskeleton. This was Commander Tull's second in command. Human vessels, the alien said, its translator creating flat, emotionless words. You will maintain current position until the surrender ceremony begins. Any deviation will result in immediate destruction. Understood, Park replied. We are here to honor the peaceful transition. The alien's compound eyes glinted. Your cooperation is noted. Prepare to escort your leader's shuttle when it arrives. The transmission ended. Park exchanged glances with his bridge crew. They really don't consider us a threat, Lieutenant Doan said quietly. That's our only advantage, Park replied. On the Hegemony command ship, Commander Tull reviewed final occupation plans with his War Council. Holographic displays showed Earth divided into administrative sectors. The transition will proceed in 3 phases, Tull explained. First, we establish control centers in major population areas. Second, we begin resource extraction operations. Third, we identify useful specimens for labor and research. What about resistance? Asked Sub-Commander Freck. Minimal and futile, Tull replied. Their military leaders understand the situation. Any isolated resistance will be met with targeted elimination of nearby population centers. And their nuclear weapons. Our intelligence shows they have disabled their launch capabilities as demanded. Verification teams will confirm this after the surrender. Tull moved to the viewport, looking down at Earth. Soon this world joins the Hegemony. Its resources will fuel our expansion to the next spiral arm. Back at the lunar base, Dr. Kim received an update from Officer Kang, who remained on Earth. The Hegemony has accepted the UN's proposed surrender format, Kang reported. They're allowing a small delegation to board their command ship for the ceremony. Who's in the delegation? Dr. Kim asked. The Secretary General, representatives from major powers, and a small security detail. The aliens think it's about saving face. And the actual plan. The delegation has been briefed. They'll stretch out the protocol as long as possible to ensure they're on the command ship during the shield reset. Dr. Kim checked the time. 6 hours until the ceremony. Any change to the fleet movement schedule? None. They begin repositioning in 5 hours, exactly as predicted. As the hours passed, tension built across Earth. Most people believed they were witnessing their last day of freedom. Military forces stood down as ordered by the Hegemony. Television broadcasts showed preparation for the surrender ceremony. In secret facilities, key scientific and military personnel waited for the outcome of Operation Sunburst. If it failed, they would become resistance leaders. If it succeeded, they would rebuild. 4 hours before the ceremony, the Hegemony fleet began to move. Massive ships shifted position with graceful precision, forming a pattern above Earth's major cities. From the ground, they looked like new constellations, dark stars threatening the world below. At the lunar base, Dr. Kim and her team tracked every movement. They're following exactly the pattern Officer Kang predicted, Engineer Juno said. What about their shield cycles? Dr. Kim asked. Energy readings show they're synchronizing as expected. Reset will occur at 9:05 hours, 5 minutes after the ceremony begins. Captain Park received the same update on the Brave. He gathered his crew for final instructions. When the pulse generators activate, we'll have exactly 3 seconds while their shields are down. Each ship targets its designated vessel and fires immediately. And if the pulses don't work, asked Lieutenant Doan. Then we die with dignity, Park answered simply. The UN delegation departed Earth on a shuttle, escorted by Hegemony fighters. Media coverage showed solemn-faced leaders preparing to surrender humanity's freedom. The Secretary-General carried a document case containing the formal surrender terms. Commander Tull watched their approach from his command center. Prepare the ceremony chamber, he ordered, and maintain full shields until the humans are aboard. Their surrender must be recorded for transmission to the Hegemony Council. As the shuttle docked with a massive alien flagship, Dr. Kim completed final checks of the pulse generator network. Each satellite was now armed and programmed. All systems green, she reported to General Lee. Countdown sequence initiated. From the lunar base viewport, she could see the Hegemony fleet in its final formation, a perfect geometric pattern spread across Earth's orbit. It was beautiful in its way, this armada that had come to conquer humanity. 1 hour to shield reset, Engineer Juno announced. Dr. Kim took a deep breath. Years of scientific work had led to this moment. Earth's fate would be decided not by its military might, but by a simple weakness in alien technology that she had discovered. May our ancestors watch over us today, she whispered, echoing Captain Park's earlier words. The countdown continued as humanity prepared for its most desperate gamble. As the Hegemony's main fleet entered Earth's upper atmosphere for their victory parade, Operation Sunburst commenced. Dr. Kim activated the EM Pulse network with a single command. Invisible waves of precisely calibrated electromagnetic radiation washed over the alien vessels. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then alarms blared across the Hegemony fleet as shield systems began failing. What is happening? Commander Tull demanded as his bridge displays flickered. The humans. They are attacking somehow, his science officer stammered. Captain Park's honor guard vessels launched specially designed missiles targeting the now vulnerable ships. As the first missile struck, the antimatter containment field on a Hegemony destroyer collapsed. The resulting explosion tore through space, creating a chain reaction as nearby vessels' fields destabilized. Within minutes, the supposedly invincible armada was engulfed in catastrophic explosions, antimatter meeting matter in brilliant flashes visible from Earth's surface. On the lunar base, Dr. Kim held her breath as she pressed the activation command. The system processed for 3 seconds, then confirmed. All 43 EM pulse generators had fired simultaneously. The wave of electromagnetic radiation was invisible to the naked eye, but the instruments showed it spreading across space toward the Hegemony fleet. The pulses reached the alien ships just as they entered their synchronized shield reset cycle. For a moment, nothing happened. The fleet continued its stately movement into position above Earth's major cities. Did it work? Engineer Juno asked, his voice tight with tension. Dr. Kim checked the readings. The pulses reached their targets. Now we wait. In Earth orbit, Captain Park stood on the bridge of the EDS Brave, watching the massive alien command ship through the viewport. His hand rested on the weapons console, ready to give the order. Pulse impact in 3, 2, 1, counted Lieutenant Doan. The bridge crew held their breath. Then, almost imperceptibly, the lights on the nearest Hegemony vessel flickered. Energy fluctuations detected across all monitored vessels, reported the sensor officer. Their shield harmonics are destabilizing. Captain Park didn't hesitate. All ships, execute attack pattern Alpha. Fire missiles now. The 6 human vessels released their hidden weapons. The missiles, designed specifically for this moment, raced toward the alien ships. Inside the Hegemony command ship, chaos erupted. Warning signals blared as displays flickered and died. Commander Tull gripped his command chair as the ship shuddered. "Report," he demanded. The science officer's compound eyes reflected the flashing emergency lights. Massive electromagnetic interference. Shield systems failing during reset cycle. "Impossible," Tull growled. "Restore shields immediately." "Cannot restore. The reset cycle is corrupted. Human vessels are launching missiles." Tull turned to the view screen just in time to see the first missile strike a nearby destroyer. The impact would normally have been absorbed by shields, but instead, it penetrated directly to the hull. The destroyer's antimatter containment field collapsed. For a split second, nothing happened. Then, a blinding flash erupted as antimatter met matter, releasing energy equivalent to a small nuclear explosion. The shockwave hit the command ship, throwing crew members to the floor. Tull struggled to his feet in time to see secondary explosions rippling through the destroyer as its power systems failed catastrophically. "Evacuate the command deck," he ordered. "Get to the escape pods." On the lunar base, Dr. Kim and her team watched in awe as the first explosion lit up space. "It worked," Engineer Juno whispered. "It actually worked." The instruments showed the chain reaction beginning. As each Hegemony ship's antimatter containment field destabilized, the released energy damaged nearby vessels, causing their fields to fail as well. Captain Park's team hit their primary targets. Dr. Kim reported to General Lee over the secure channel. "The chain reaction is spreading through their fleet." In the United Nations building on Earth, General Lee stood with other military leaders, watching the live feed from space telescopes. The Hegemony ships were exploding one after another, brilliant flashes against the black of space. "The delegation," he said suddenly. "They're still on the command ship." Officer Kang, who stood nearby monitoring communications, shook her head. "They never boarded. The shuttle docked but remained sealed." The Secretary General received the abort code 5 minutes before the attack. Captain Park's voice came through the command channel. "This is Park. 4 of the 6 primary targets destroyed. Moving to secondary targets now." His flotilla of small ships darted between the massive alien vessels, firing missiles at any ship that showed signs of restabilizing its shields. The human vessels seemed tiny and insignificant, yet they delivered devastating blows to the crippled fleet. On the Hegemony command ship, Commander Tull fought his way through smoke-filled corridors toward the escape pods. Emergency lighting bathed everything in red. Crew members rushed past in panic. "Commander," a voice called through the chaos. Sub-Commander Vrek appeared, supporting an injured crew member. "What is happening?" "The humans," Tull said, his translator struggling with the emotion in his voice. "They found a weakness in our shield systems. They attacked during reset." "Impossible. Their technology is primitive." A violent explosion rocked the ship. Somewhere deep inside, an antimatter containment field had begun to fail. "We have minutes before this ship is destroyed," Tull said. "Get to the escape pods." From Earth's surface, people watched in amazement as new stars seemed to appear in the daylight sky. Bright flashes marking the destruction of alien ships. News spread quickly. Humanity was fighting back. In orbit, Captain Park surveyed the devastation. Over half the Hegemony fleet was destroyed or crippled. The remaining ships attempted to retreat, their formations broken. "Target the command ship," he ordered. All remaining missiles. The EDS Brave and its sister ships converged on the massive alien flagship, launching their final weapons. The missiles struck true, penetrating through weakened shield areas. Inside the command ship, Commander Tull reached the escape pod bay just as the final missiles hit. The deck buckled beneath his feet. Warning signals indicated catastrophic antimatter containment failure. He fought his way to the nearest pod, sealed himself inside, and launched. The small craft shot away from the doomed ship, accelerating rapidly. Through the viewport, Tull watched as his command ship, the pride of the Hegemony fleet, began to break apart. Secondary explosions rippled along its length. Then, in a blinding flash, the main antimatter reserves detonated. The shockwave caught his escape pod, sending it tumbling end over end into the darkness of space. On the lunar base, Dr. Kim watched the command ship's destruction with mixed emotions. They had won. Humanity had survived. But at what cost? Thousands of alien lives extinguished in moments. Fleet status, she asked. Engineer Junho checked the readings. 87% of the Hegemony vessels destroyed or disabled. The rest are retreating beyond lunar orbit. And Captain Park's team. 4 ships intact. They're returning to Earth orbit now. Dr. Kim opened the secure channel. Captain Park, this is Dr. Kim. Congratulations. Operation Sunburst was successful. Confirmed, came Park's tired voice. The Honor Guard sends its respects to the science team. We couldn't have done this without you. As the remaining Hegemony ships fled Earth's orbit, humanity began to grasp what had happened. The invincible alien armada had been defeated. The species that had come to conquer had instead been humbled by the very primitiveness they had mocked. From cities around the world, people emerged to look at the sky. Where once dark alien ships had loomed, now only the blue of Earth's atmosphere remained, occasionally lit by distant flashes, as the last Hegemony vessels destroyed themselves in their retreat. Humanity had just changed its place in the universe. No longer were they the primitive species awaiting conquest. They had proven themselves dangerous, a civilization to be respected and feared. And somewhere in deep space, Commander Tull's escape pod continued its journey, carrying news that would shake the Hegemony to its foundations. The humans had won. Commander Tull's flagship escaped the destruction, limping back to Hegemony space with news that would shake galactic civilization. Humans were not the primitive species they had appeared to be. On Earth, recovery teams salvaged alien technology from the wreckage, accelerating human technological development by centuries. Dr. Kim led a new institute dedicated to understanding and advancing the recovered technology. We didn't win because we were more advanced, she explained in her address to the United Nations. We won because we were underestimated and resourceful. Captain Park, now Admiral Park, commanded Earth's first diplomatic vessel as it ventured beyond the solar system. Their mission: to establish contact with other species subjugated by the Hegemony. As news of Earth's victory spread, the once mighty Hegemony fractured. Many worlds sought alliance with humanity instead, impressed by a species that had turned their invaders' greatest strength against them. Within a decade, Earth had established itself as a new galactic power, respected, and more importantly, feared. The species that had seemed destined for defeat had instead found its place among the stars. Commander Tull's escape pod drifted for 6 days before a Hegemony scout vessel found it. Weak from injuries and low oxygen, he barely registered the rescue. He awoke in a medical facility on Regus Prime, the closest Hegemony outpost to Earth. High Council representatives arrived within days, demanding explanations. How had the mighty Hegemony fleet been defeated by primitives? Tull faced their questions with a changed perspective. We underestimated them, he told the grim-faced council members. We saw their technological limitations but missed their adaptability. They found our weakness and exploited it perfectly. Impossible, declared Council Leader Vex. Their science is centuries behind ours, and yet our fleet is destroyed. Tull replied simply. News spread quickly through Hegemony space. The undefeated Armada, conqueror of 17 star systems, had been decimated by a single primitive world. Subject planets whispered of resistance. Allied species questioned Hegemony leadership. Meanwhile, on Earth, cities damaged during the battle were rebuilt. The real work, however, happened in secured facilities around the world where scientists examined recovered alien technology. Dr. Kim's institute occupied a former university campus. Research teams worked day and night studying the remains of Hegemony ships. The most valuable find came 3 months after the battle: an intact data core from a destroyed cruiser. "It's a treasure beyond measure," Dr. Kim told General Lee as they inspected the salvage device. Star charts, technical schematics, cultural data on dozens of species, everything we need to understand our place in the galaxy. "And defend it," General Lee added. The data core revealed a startling truth. The Hegemony ruled over 32 subjugated species across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Some had been conquered centuries ago, their populations serving as laborers and soldiers. Others had joined voluntarily, seeking protection from worse threats. Earth's leaders debated their next move. Some advocated isolation, focusing on building defenses against future attacks. Others saw opportunity in the Hegemony's weakened state. "We should reach out to these enslaved worlds," Admiral Park argued during a UN Security Council meeting. "Form alliances. The Hegemony will return eventually, and we'll need allies." His proposal won approval. Earth would build its first true interstellar vessel using recovered alien technology. Its mission: diplomacy, not conquest. Construction began immediately. Scientists and engineers worked from Hegemony schematics, adapting alien principles to human needs. Dr. Kim led the propulsion team, developing a smaller version of the antimatter drive. "The irony isn't lost on me," she told Admiral Park during a tour of the construction facility. "The same technology that nearly destroyed us will now take us to the stars." The ship took shape in Earth orbit, visible from the ground as a bright point of light, a symbol of humanity's new direction. They named it Emissary. 1 year after the battle, Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the completed vessel. His crew represented nations from across Earth, the best pilots, scientists, and diplomats humanity could offer. "Final systems check complete," reported First Officer Sunwoo. "All systems nominal." Admiral Park nodded. "Navigation, set course for Proxima Centauri. Our first diplomatic visit awaits." The emissary's engines flared to life. The ship accelerated smoothly, breaking free of Earth's gravity well. As it passed the moon, Dr. Kim watched from the lunar base, where Operation Sunburst had been coordinated. "Safe journey," she whispered. The emissary reached Proxima Centauri in just 11 days. There they found an inhabited world, Proxima b, home to a species called the Talari. According to the Hegemony data core, the Talari had been conquered 50 years earlier. "They're receiving our transmission," Communications Officer Dohan reported. "They're requesting visual confirmation that we're not Hegemony." Admiral Park stood before the communication screen. "This is Admiral Taewoo Park of Earth. We come in peace and friendship." The Talari leader who appeared on screen had blue-tinted skin and large, luminous eyes. She studied the humans with obvious surprise. "You are the species that destroyed the Hegemony fleet," she said finally. "Word has reached even our isolated world." "We defended our planet," Park replied. "Now we seek allies. The Hegemony will return someday." The Talari leader's expression changed subtly, perhaps not as strong as before. "Their control is weakening. 3 systems have already declared independence since news of your victory spread." This pattern repeated across the stars. The emissary visited 7 planetary systems in its first mission. Each time, they found peoples eager to meet the humans who had humbled the Hegemony. On Earth, Dr. Kim's institute made breakthrough after breakthrough. Antimatter production became efficient enough for commercial use. Shield technology adapted from Hegemony designs protected cities from natural disasters. Medical advances from alien databases extended human lifespans. "We've compressed centuries of development into years," Dr. Kim told the UN General Assembly on the 2nd anniversary of the battle. "But our greatest strength remains our humanity, our creativity, our adaptability, our willingness to work together in crisis." The Hegemony, meanwhile, faced internal rebellion. Commander Toole, once disgraced, found himself appointed to a new role: diplomat. The High Council, recognizing the changing reality, sent him to Earth. 5 years after the failed invasion, Tull's diplomatic vessel entered Earth orbit under heavy escort. Admiral Park, returned from his third diplomatic mission, greeted the former enemy. "Welcome to Earth, Commander," Park said without warmth. "Or should I say, Ambassador?" "Ambassador is correct," Tull replied. "I bring a proposal from the Hegemony Council. We seek peace." The terms were favorable to Earth: non-aggression pacts, trade agreements, technology exchange. But most significantly, the Hegemony recognized Earth's sovereignty and its right to form alliances with any world, including former Hegemony subjects. "They're not offering this from kindness," Officer Kang, now Earth's intelligence director, observed during the treaty discussions. "Their empire is collapsing. They need this peace more than we do." The treaty was signed on the 10th anniversary of the battle. Representatives from 27 worlds attended, former Hegemony subjects now allied with Earth. The ceremony took place in the same United Nations hall where, a decade earlier, leaders had prepared for surrender. Dr. Kim, her hair now streaked with gray, watched the proceedings with quiet pride. The frightened scientist who had discovered an alien weakness had helped transform her species' destiny. "Did you ever imagine this outcome?" Admiral Park asked her during the reception. "Never," she admitted. "I just wanted to save our world." "You did more than that," he said, gesturing to the room filled with humans and aliens talking as equals. "You opened the galaxy to us." Outside, people gathered in the plaza to watch the night sky. Among the familiar stars, new lights moved, ships coming and going from Earth, carrying humans to distant worlds and bringing visitors from across the galaxy. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not through conquest, but by defending their home with ingenuity and courage. The species that had faced extinction now helped shape a new galactic order, where cooperation began to replace domination. And in the great distances between stars, former enemies learned a valuable lesson: never underestimate a species fighting for survival. The end.